Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
We want to welcome our guests back from last week's show, and I just want to say is here on the National Federation of the Blind Newsline show, we just had great conversation, and we continue to have this conversation dealing with disabilities and disability rights and employment, and we have several guests back with us again, and I want to reintroduce Rebecca Bahan.
Yes.
And she's the director of the American Sign Language and Education.
Yes.
So I really have enjoyed our conversation from the previous week, and we have a lot of other good information to share. So, Florence, you want to introduce?
I certainly will. And we also have Miss Kathy Bernhardt from Tangam. So, both of you, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. With that. Thank you. So let's do a small recap.
Sure.
Okay, Rebecca, what is your mission with Luna Language?
Sure. Luna Language Services is a multi-language company, and we offer on-site and remote interpreting services as well as translation services. My part in that is that I'm the director of American Sign Language Services and Education. So I work with ASL interpreters around the state who provide language access for the interactions between the hearing community and the deaf or hard of hearing community.
Okay, and what about you, Kathy?
Yes, well, Tangam is a nonprofit organization, United Way agency in Indianapolis, and we provide services throughout central Indiana for anybody with a disability, residential, jobs, employment, behavioral, and a lot of other different community support services to help them live independently and happy in a community. And my position at Tangam is I am a director of a consulting and training arm of Tangam that we actually consult and train businesses on employing people with disabilities.
Now, you guys recently had an event on the 18th?
Yes, we did.
And also on the 24th.
Yes.
Well, the 24th is Deaf Awareness Week, correct?
Yes, it is. It was a Deaf Awareness Week or Awareness Week of the Deaf. You could call it either way. Was established by the World Federation of the Deaf, which is a global deaf advocacy support organization. And it's just an opportunity to bring light to the human rights of the deaf community and the hard of hearing community, and how they may be overlooked, but how we could come together as a community to work towards decreasing stigma and fear and misunderstanding that surrounds the deaf community.
Okay, and our being in Disabilities Awareness Week now, are there any special events that are planned for this week?
There are events for the Deaf Awareness Week. There are events all around the country. The event that we had on the 18th was kind of our kickoff to Deaf Awareness Week, and all you have to do is search Facebook or Google Deaf Awareness Week and your location, and certainly there are events everywhere.
Okay.
Now, there were certain, you had several employers, or you have a number of employers that's participating?
that participated in the event. There was a panel discussion with two employers that are really on their journey, if you will, to disability inclusion in the workforce, and how they're actually hiring, retaining, and recruiting individuals with disabilities, including somebody, not only just somebody that's deaf and hard of hearing, but all disabilities, and how effective communication, ensuring everyone is heard, was the name of the event. And the reason for that was there's the miscommunications that happen about not only about disabilities, but how everybody communicates differently, and especially with disabilities, and how to address that they're not overlooked, and ensuring that they are successful as they enter the workforce and as they are moving up in the workforce, and they're not overlooked as well once they have a job.
Okay, and do you ever have workshops or anything of that sort for employers who might consider or who might need help with being more effective communicators as far as diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
Absolutely. At Tangam Business Resourcing, that's what we do. We actually do trainings for businesses. We train them on how to incorporate and look at strategies to provide not only effective communication, but are they including people with disabilities in their recruitment strategies? And how can they do that? Because it really starts with that. And it also then begins with, how are you interviewing people? Can you look at your interviews processing a little differently? So we talk about that, and we do a lot of training on the communication piece, and not only that, but as far as how to integrate people with disabilities in the community, and also how to find the right partnerships. I think we had spoken about that a little bit off air, just about partnerships, and so it doesn't overwhelm the business community, but so we also help them with learning how to develop those partnerships, and it's with partners like Luna Language that Tangam partners with many, that we can, we don't provide the resource, we absolutely help the company find the resource that they're needing. Because that's what it's all about. That's how it's going to be successful, if all agencies and organizations partner together and collaborate for the benefit of people with disabilities.
And do you find that many employers are reaching out to Luna Language and Tangam for assistance with communicating better, working together as in the workplace?
I'm going to let, for probably Luna, more so than for Tangam. Ours is still on an advocacy, education piece, because I think businesses are just now beginning to do things like this in Indianapolis, is hiring people because they're trying to address those fears and stigmas. So they reach out more to us on that end, on where do we even begin? Where do we even, I have so many people, businesses ask me, well, I want to hire somebody, but where do I go? Like everybody with disabilities is in one place. So that's, we always get that. So it's knowing those resources and who to call, and it's just the education piece is what we provide. But for Luna, they probably get more calls.
We offer training to employers and to our clients in terms of deaf community, deaf culture awareness, so that they know, our benefit or what we bring to this scenario of employers looking to the disability community. Luna's expertise is in the language access and the communication. So we work with employers to talk to them not only about little tidbits and hints about how to work with individuals from the deaf community, but also how to work with an interpreter, because that, if done correctly, is just as if the interpreter was never there, and the relationships develop between the hearing and the deaf individuals, and that's the type of outcomes that we love to see.
Now, are you running into where a lot of instances where they may feel that a person, but this is for both of you, that may be deaf or with a disability would be a high risk on the employment for the employers?
We run into that all the time, and again, addressing the assumptions and the fear and stigma of that. And there's plenty of research and statistics of people working with disabilities that actually have it shown that they either have the same or better safety records than those without disabilities, and they also have better retention than those without disabilities. These were studies that were done with a major company, so it's those statistics are out there, and I think that it's just addressing those fears and stigmas that it maybe will help companies, because, and especially with the deaf and hard of hearing, that is probably more so, and with someone that's visually visually impaired or blind as well.
I think, we talked before the show started, and you were telling us about the devices and the technology that you have at your disposal, and that the technology component is wildly unused and unknown. The disability communities are starting to get technology to adapt and to help them adapt and provide accommodations, but I don't think that the average employer would know that the technology is available that would help kind of assuage some of their fear of working with someone who is disabled, and to help the workplace become accommodating to the specific needs. So I think technology is a huge piece that has just been, I think, really underutilized.
And just to piggyback on that a little bit, that's another fear and stigma, is I think a lot of businesses fear the accommodation piece. So when Rebecca says accommodation, a lot of times when you say accommodation or disability, people automatically go to accommodation and then think it's going to cost them thousands of dollars, when in fact it doesn't. And there are organizations out there that provide the technology, sometimes at no charge to these businesses. So that's the education piece that also needs to go out there, is helping those businesses understand what's available for them as well when they hire people with disabilities.
And that's a true statement there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back from break.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I am a CFP practitioner, and I happen to be blind. I rely on NFB Newsline to keep me current with Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times.
Hoosiers can hear Indiana magazines, circulars, national magazines, and information from across the globe. Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Welcome back to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana, and we are continuing our conversation with Kathy and Rebecca, and let's just go right into it. So during our break, we were discussing a few things that we feel are very important that the community knows. So Kathy, would you like to just take over where we left off?
Yeah, about not being disabled or not.
Oh, yes, sure. So in our break, we were talking about those that have hidden disabilities, if you will, those that maybe haven't been termed as having their disability isn't bad enough to receive services. And we were all three discussing, or four of us all discussing, that in the deaf community as well as the blind community, and those that are starting to go blind and those that aren't completely deaf, and then those that are also have hidden disabilities, maybe some learning differences, that they are not getting the services that they need. So when they graduate from high school, or maybe they don't even realize they have a disability until later in life, they kind of fall through the cracks, and don't know where to go for services. And how we as an organization and partnerships can help people, and they can call us and we can help direct them. Even if we can't provide the service ourselves, we can absolutely provide resources for them to help them get started to be successful.
That's something that working as an ASL interpreter and being behind the scenes to some extent, and then in my position at Luna, something that I've learned is that the organizations out there that work with the disabled community are pretty networked, and we're really good resource scrappers, you know. So if someone comes to us and for whatever reason we don't have the right service for them, or it can't be given to them, or whatever, then you know, we almost always know of someone else in another organization that can help. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Now, we were talking about those that aren't disabled enough sometimes to receive services. You want to expound on that a little bit about what we were talking about? Those that are right in between being deaf and deaf impaired.
Yeah, so you know, the deaf community has a rich culture and a rich community, and very, very deeply rooted. And individuals who are latent deaf or are hard of hearing and don't identify with the deaf community, but also don't identify in the hearing community because they have a hearing loss, are often stuck in the middle and don't have social support or even organizational support because they're not deaf enough, but they're not hearing enough. And so it's sometimes difficult for those individuals to find the resources that they need, even if it's just social support, you know.
And we find that to be the same in the blind community as well. Those that are, you know, in our school systems particularly, those that aren't blind enough, so to speak, to learn Braille. And that becomes a problem, particularly a student that may have a progressive eye disease and later on will succumb to total sight loss or more difficulty in sight loss. And, you know, oftentimes they wait till the student get to the point to where, oh, now you qualify. You might be 14, 15, 16, you know, at that time. And that also throws that student into another, you know, I guess, disservice. Because a lot of those students, you know, it takes time to learn, relearn, and learn again. And some students are graduating with certificates and not degrees.
Right.
You know, and that's. Do you find that to be a problem in the deaf community?
Yes, absolutely. Because this particular disability, hearing loss affects communication, affects language, affects literacy, you know, all these different components of the world. You know, someone who has no support, who's falling through the cracks, who isn't deaf enough, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, they're losing out on little, you know, vicarious information, things that we know just from growing up and being able to hear, you know, how to talk on a telephone, or what's acceptable way to, you know, approach conflict, or, you know, what have you. And so, yeah, they absolutely face life with almost a double disability, if you will. It's not just the physical disability of having a hearing loss, but also this increased or another layer of disability with language and the social world and things like that.
And that's one reason Luna Language and Tangam Business Resourcing actually partnered together for our event back on September 18th, is for that effective communication and the hidden disability area as well.
Right.
Because that's part of it for employers, is they may have employees already that they're working with that they don't even realize has some hearing loss, or even maybe a hidden disability that's causing them not to be as effective in their job. And maybe it's the communication, you know, maybe they're not understanding correctly because they have a learning disability, or maybe they're not learning correctly because they have hearing loss and they don't want to tell anybody. So there's still that stigma too on people with disabilities that they're afraid to tell employers that they have a disability because they don't want to be, you know, termed or be, you know, singled out, because they want to fit in just like everybody else. So I think that those hidden disabilities also, they fall through the cracks in some businesses and they lose their job because there wasn't they weren't hearing correctly. When I say hearing correctly, I just don't mean by the deaf. I mean that communication style with anybody whether you're deaf or not, is very important in the disability community.
Now, next month is Disability Employment Month.
Yes, National Employment, yes.
Okay, so how do you guys go about, do you partner with anyone, employers at that point in time? Or?
So we started off with September 18th event to help kick that off for November, kind of an early thing to do. We are also, Tangam Business Resourcing is partnering with the Mayor's Advisory Council on their big event, their Accessibility Award event that they do in October. We are also doing another event in October in Hancock County. And in doing a lunch and learn, if you will, called Missed Opportunities. And that is to help businesses understand that they're missing some opportunities if they're not looking for into the disability community to hire. And especially with the unemployment rate right now so low, this is an untapped workforce that a lot of people haven't thought about.
Yeah, it is low, but it's still high for
It's
people
very
with
high for
disabilities
people with
because we're looking at 70%
absolutely.
unemployment rate.
Yeah.
And at the same sense, when you work with these employers, your group helps train and put in a mindset of hiring people with disabilities. Now, how's your success rate with that?
It's very good. It's very good. I think most of the training helps open their eyes. And I think when companies really take that first step, and Rebecca, you probably have this experience as well, in Luna language and going with the deaf community, is that when the companies actually take that first step and say, we want to do this, teach us, give us some disability etiquette or awareness, or learn communication strategies, hiring strategies, what's best practices that other businesses are doing. Those are all things that make for a great culture in a company. And what they find out is that not only did they do this thinking that they were going to be great on hiring people with disabilities, but it actually made their entire company better.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we hear that time and time again from companies, is that we went after this thinking that this is what we wanted to do, not thinking that it was going to be such a positive impact on our entire culture of our company.
Now, I do know that in the past, with the Americans with Disabilities Act, it used to be like some employers, and they probably still do, try to find loopholes to keep people from being hired with disabilities. And with this particular administration, it is deemed that they're not a friend of people with disabilities, and some of the changes they want to make within the ADA. Are you guys at liberty to talk on that at all?
Well, I think the only thing I could say on that is that on the employer side, all the employers that I've worked on, and then let's talk generational, because I think the younger generation is now, the Gen X's are now starting to become the bosses of these companies as well. They have a more open mind than to maybe when my age group did when we were going to school. And I think that open-mindedness of the younger generation, and so many millennials in the workforce now, and that I think millennials have either overtaken the baby boomers right now, or they're ready to, and as far as size goes. So they're one of the largest age groups coming up, that, that's going to change. So yes, there are some fears. I'm going to address that there are fears with everything when it comes to any kind of changes in policies or politics. But I think that, again, I don't want to think that I'm naive, but I also want to be very positive about the younger generation, and that they have really embraced, because disabilities is in their schools all the time. They're not separated like they were. So there's not separation. So I think that we're going to see some changes in the next 5 to 10 years in arena. I would think with the generations.
Well, I tell you, we could talk on and talk on. I tell you, we have so much information to share, and we would love to have you come back onto the show and share some more information, because it's a lot. We haven't even touched vocational rehabilitation services and some of the problems that exist there.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a short pause for the calls, and we'll be right back.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post, too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
Well, welcome back to the show. And Kathy, during the break, we were discussing a few things, and would you like to share with the audience?
Sure, we were discussing about success rates of businesses that are hiring people with disabilities and the outcomes of that, and also about stigmas that relate to disabilities. And we were just discussing especially the disability population of those that are deaf and those that are blind, and the stigma that I believe sometimes can be a higher stigma and cause more unemployment rate between those two disability communities because of that fear that the employer may have, or not even the employer, or anybody may have about particularly somebody that's deaf or visually or impaired or blind, that they can't do the job. Instead of making those assumptions and learning really about the qualifications of this community and how most of them do have education, and they have had jobs. Some of them that developed their disability later in life did have a career and had to step away from their career to learn how to navigate the world, and how sometimes they're not welcome back. It's not that they're not welcome back, it's just that there's those assumptions on them that they can't get back into the workplace because employers don't know how to interview them or how to integrate somebody that is maybe visually impaired or blind.
Okay. Now, on that note, we have had a wonderful show. And we'd like to thank you both for being here. And we know with you both that working together does work.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
As Lee says quite often, teamwork does make the dream work.
In October, we have the National Federation of the Blind Indiana State Convention, and that's going to be held at the Embassy Suites North on Michigan Road. That's going to be October the 12th through the 14th, and we encourage you and invite your groups to come out and interact with us there.
Absolutely.
So we look forward to that. And we just want to say thank you very much for joining us again. Thank you, listening and viewing audience, for joining us. And we'll see you next week. Take good care.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org. or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.